For the first filmed walk to the Old Man of Coniston, the southernmost of the major lakeland fells, we begin by surveying the hill from the east, on the outskirts of Coniston village. The top of the Old Man at 2635 feet or 801 metres is well frequented by walkers at all times of year, and is considered almost a pilgrimage by many visitors staying in and around the village. Many mine workings scar the mountain on its north, east and west sides, Coniston slate having been much valued for its beautiful greenish hue and its fine texture and durability. We now take the steep single-track road southwest up out of the village to the huge car park at the eastern foot of the hill. On the way we get a first fine view of Weatherlam, one of the Old Man's near neighbours, and as the camera pans from the north round to the west, the view on the horizon takes in Swirl Howe, then Great and Little Howe crags and on to Brim Fell and below Beck Fells, which form the hollow containing low water. And here a good close-up of Great and Little Howe crags, which form part of the great 3-mile north-south ridge connecting Swirl Howe with Coniston Old Man, seen here. The difference in height between the two tops being only a couple of feet. The ridge is above 2,000 feet throughout and makes a delightful walk in its own right. And from the moorland car park at a rather convenient 800 feet above sea level, the path to low water around the Old Man heads off through the bracken to the north. For the longer but scenically more interesting route, we take the Walner Scar track, previously an old trade route, and which starts by contouring around the base of the hill on its south and southeast sides, below the only present-day working quarry and by Little Arrow Moor, the site of a Bronze Age settlement. It was here also that a youngster claimed a close encounter with a UFO in the 1950s, and produced a photograph of some object to corroborate the evidence, but the flying saucer has not returned, possibly the closest things these days being the many and varied wheel hubcaps on the ever-increasing number of vehicles which patronise the car park here. The Walnascar path turns west, through the cove, then up below Brown Pike and onto the Walnascar Brown Pike Cove. Having crossed the quaint bridge over the beck draining from Goat's Water, we get a good clear view of Brown Pike and Buck Pike, the first objectives on the ridge walk north to Dow Crag. And here a close-up of Buck Pike, which at 750 metres is roughly the midpoint on that walk. The camera follows the high ridge south to Brown Pike. The hint of a high hollow to the north of Brown Pike turns out to contain the secluded Blind Tarn, which is seen to full extent later from high up on the ridge. The Walna Scar track heads unerringly up west below Brown Pike, seen here on the left of the picture. The path crosses a large area of high desolate moorland called the Cove. Up to the north, at the head of the cove, the huge glacial scoop between Dow Crag here on the left and the western slopes of the Old Man on the right holds Goat's Water, one of the 6 tarns to be seen on this lovely outing. The western slopes of the Old Man are seen to be deeply scarred with many substantial slate quarries and mine shafts, all of which are nowadays thankfully disused. We proceed on the path west now towards Walna Scar, as mentioned below Brown Pike, and which itself, as seen here, has not escaped the attention of the quarrymen in days gone by. Now on the Walna Scar Brown Pike Col, the Scarfells show themselves beyond Upper Eskdale to the north, with Scafell Pike on the right and Scafell to the left. And again here the conical Heart of Fell appears across Dunnerdale to the west. The full north-south extent of the Scafell range seen from here highlights Great End, Ill Crag, Broad Crag, Scafell Pike, England's highest, and Scafell on the left. And climbing north to Brown Pike, views back south are over a pastoral Dunnerdale and Walna Scar, which continues as a low grassy ridge southwest to the top of Caw, spelled C-A-W, at 529 metres, and at the top right of the picture here. And here we see the very distant Duddon estuary, with Walney Island just visible beyond Barrow, at the tip of the Furness Peninsula, some 15 miles southwest. And having reached Brown Pike, the main impression, beside the fine view north to Buck Pike, the Old Man and Coniston water, is of a lashing easterly gale, accentuated to storm force by the steep east face of the Dow Crag Ridge. Keeping one's feet now begins to be a problem, not to mention trying to film in such conditions. And again the Scafell Range is seen to the left of Buck Pike, Dow Crag itself being hidden from here and about a mile of rough walking away. And the path which we use later on to climb up east from Goat's Hawes is well seen from here, stretching up and around to the south to the Old Man summit. And Brantwood, the home of John Ruskin, the famous 19th century writer and artist, from 1872 until his death in 1900, stands on the east bank of Coniston Water, where Donald Campbell made his fateful final attempt on the world water speed record in January 1967 in his turbojet-engined Bluebird Case 7. Hills in view at closer quarters are Bowfell over Crinkle Crags, Esk Pike, then over Esk Hawes to Great End, then south to Ill Crag, Broad Crag, and Scafell Pike, soaring above Great Moss in Upper Eskdale. Then over the Mickledore Broadstand Col to Scafell East Buttress, the summit of Scafell being to the left. And looking back south to Brown Pike with the wind farms on Kirby Moor beyond. The ridge walk is continued along the path north to Dow Crag. find our first glimpse of Goat's Hawes, which we cross later. Beyond the Hawes to the northeast rise Great and Little Howe Crags, seen earlier from below, the ridge then continuing north over to Swirl Howe. The substantial stone platform and summit cairn on the top of Coniston Old Man, half a mile to the east, and across the gaping chasm which holds Goat's Water in a deep glaciated trench, a full 1,000 feet below. A well-used path from the tarn up to Goat's Hawes is seen here. This path originates by branching off to the right or northwest from the Walner Scar track, back by Little Arrow Moor. The first of Dow Crag's 5 stupendous buttresses come into view from here. Dow Crag is a favourite haunt of rock climbers and, together with Scafell Crag and Bowfell Buttress, saw the birth of rock climbing in the district, when a now defunct rail link to Coniston provided transport for enthusiasts from the Furness district earlier in the century. Climbs of all degrees of severity can be sought out and found hereabouts. There is even a safe route for walkers up across the side of the crag from Goat's Water, and is called the South Rake. The exits of Easy Gully and Great Gully are passed on the approach to Dow Crag. Both these very steep routes up through the crag from Goat's Water must be considered out of bounds to walkers without extensive scrambling experience as well as a safety rope. From Dow Crag, Pike O'Stickle, one of the Langdale pikes, appears over Pike Oblisco 5 miles to the north, and Bowfell over Crinkle Crags with Esk Pike beyond to the left. The northern outpost of Great Cars appears beyond Swirl Howe 2 miles to the north. The Helvellyn Range on the horizon reaches south to the Hump of Fairfield. Helvellyn Top, Nethermost Pike and Dollywagon Pike appear over Great and Little Howe Crags. Some sculpturesque outcrops of vertically bedded slate grace the path down from Dow Crag to Goat's Hawes. The path, normally a pleasant half-mile ramble, is rendered something of a trial and a tribulation by the strong and gusty wind. Now on Goat's Hawes, a fine view back south shows the full extent of Goat's Water, albeit foreshortened from here, in the deep glacial hollow about 500 feet below. Then the impressive 1,000 feet of Screen Crag soaring darkly to Dow Crag, which itself assumes a more austere and brooding perspective from here. The cairn in the foreground marks the start of the path down to the tarn and the cove, seen earlier from the Dow Crag ridge. And the ever-active British nuclear fuel Sellafield graces the horizon to the left of Harterfell in a fiery sunset on the Irish Sea coast. The steepish climb west, then south, now takes us in about a mile to the Coniston Old Man trig point and summit cairn, and with ever more beautiful views to the Scafell range, and also over to Dow Crag. The sighting of the large cairn over on Brimfell signifies the easing of gradient and the proximity of the Old Man's summit. And a reverse view back southwest along the route already covered shows Brown Pike above the just visible Blind Tarn and connecting half a mile further north to, of course, Buck Pike, then onto the now forbidding looking Dow Crag, seen adjacent to the west. Now approaching the summit, low water is revealed beyond the severe plunge of ground down over below Beckfells to the north, and the majestic Weatherlam with low water are made out some 1 and 2 miles to the northeast. The heavily eroded low water path zigzags its way up the fell with the Copper Mines Valley beyond. The top of Coniston Old Man is rich in legend and tradition, and is even believed in some circles to have been divinely blessed, and conferring spiritual benefit to all who climb the hill. What can never be in dispute, though, are the heavenly views to be had from this spot. Having reluctantly left the airy perch of Coniston Old Man top, we wend our way in failing light down the steep path to low water, and one cannot help but be struck at this point by the sheer size of the path here, it having been eroded literally to the width of a 6-lane motorway. Happily, work is now underway and, starting further down, to form a defined path to alleviate the damage caused by heavy foot traffic. Work in progress on this urgently required project is shown in the following short film of the tourist approach to the Old Man through a disused slate quarry and past low water. So the first filmed climb to one of the country's best known and loved hills draws to a close, with some fine sunset scenes of backlit clouds passing behind Brimfell above low water, and leaving us with an abiding memory of a truly exhilarating day on the fells. In addition to the circuitous route to the Old Man by the Brown Pike Dow Crag Ridge, a short supplement is included here to illustrate the tourist route to the top. A well-blazed track heads off from the car park in the direction of Swirl Howe to the north and passes below the eastern flank of the mountain. And from about half a mile along the track, views soon open up of Coniston Water, with Brantwood again coming into view on the eastern shore of the lake. Whereas up ahead to the north, Swirl Howe, Black Sails and Weatherlam are the dominant features. The path turns west after about a mile and steepens to climb through a long-defunct slate quarry up to low water. From the town, a steep, heavily eroded path then zigzags up through a further 650 feet to the top. A slight terrace of old miners' cottages, now converted into holiday homes, far below in Coppermine's Valley, together with the many abandoned mine workings and spoil heaps, seen during this approach to the Old Man, remind one of the hectic activity carried on here in centuries gone by. The rich veins of copper in the valley below Weatherlam have been exploited since Roman times, but it wasn't until the 16th century that large-scale extraction of the mineral, as well as slate in the district, was begun. The nearby Levers water was later dammed at its outflow to provide the large volumes of water required for more extensive copper production. Halfway up through an extensive crop of abandoned slate quarries dating from the early 20th century, the path passes by a cluster of dilapidated slate buildings, which only add to the eerie feeling of desertion. Some of them still housing the rusted remains of the heavy machinery used to transport the slate down the fell side. Rotting lineless telegraph poles, rusted trolleys on overgrown tracks, and thick grounded cables strewn about complete the impression of desertion and desolation. The path continues steeply up through the quarries and on to low water. Low Water, a secluded and cold-looking town, situated in a dramatic setting bounded by steep ramparts of crags on two sides, rising to Brimfell and to below Beck Fells, makes the ideal spot for a break and a drink from the flask, before tackling the final steep section of the path to the summit cairn, seen here, about 200 metres above. The weather, not having been too promising so far, unfortunately closes in as we ascend further, leaving us just enough time to record the summit before the rain sets in. About halfway up the path from Low Water, we come across a group of hard-working lads from the Countryside Commission, engaged in important conservation work, skillfully constructing a stone staircase with drainage ducts up through the long eroded sections of the path to the Old Man. This work is much needed here, and it is to be hoped that future generations of walkers will keep to this new path when completed. As more height is gained, levers water as well as low water ice seen to the north. And the path levels out at the east shoulder of the Old Man, at about 2,400 feet. The summit cairn now well in view up to the west. Now approaching the summit in deteriorating weather conditions, the features recognised from the previous film, namely low water far below, the Scarfells and Dow Crag, are quickly being obscured by rain and mist, providing a more typical yet still atmospheric finale to these first ever filmed climbs to a grand old mountain in southern Lakeland.